Hi everyone, I'm Chef Susie with Escoffier. Welcome to our live session this morning. Today we're going to be making a frozen berry chantilly cake. This is something that's super easy. We're going to do a streusel type of crust. We're going to mix some compote with some egg whites and some whipped cream. Then we're going to pour it into a pan. It's going to be a still form frozen dessert, really easy to make. Tons of variations on this. Once you get the technique down, you can do so many things. So I chose an almond streusel crust, and for the berry compote, I chose strawberries, blueberries, and raspberries. But we'll talk about some variations along the way. So knowing all that, let's get started. Okay, for my streusel crust, something real simple. I've got some all-purpose flour, I have some brown sugar, and I have some almond flour. You can easily substitute another nut flour. Hazelnut flour works nice. Cashew flour if you have access to it. We're just going to go ahead and mix this up. You can also substitute some, chopped up kind of finely ground walnuts or pecans or really any nut. And you don't have to grind them really fine. You can have some little bit bigger pieces if that's the type of crust that you like. So it's really limitless. This is just very basic and you can do a lot of different things with this. So I'm just mixing together these dry ingredients, and I have some butter at room temperature. This is unsalted butter. And I'm just going to, mix this together, and we're just going to make a very simple crust, super easy to do. You could do this on the mixer too, but you want to make sure that you're just mixing it until it's crumbly. So if you do it on the mixer, be sure it's not getting away from you. So I'm just kind of rubbing this together. You can use some forks, you can use a dough cutter, but I like to, put my gloves on and use my hands. So for this streusel mixture, I added 1 stick of butter, which is a half of a cup of butter, or 1/4 of a pound. And I used 1 cup of all-purpose flour, a half of a cup of almond flour, and about 1/3 of a cup of brown sugar. You can use granulated sugar. You could use organic sugar if you like. So really, like I said, the flavor combinations are really limitless. And it's just a basic streusel crust, and it just really, kind of similar to a graham cracker crust. You could go ahead and do a graham cracker with this. You could do a cookie crust, and let's say you have some cookies that, you didn't do a very good job portioning them, and you have some large ones and some small ones, and maybe the cookies didn't sell because they're, all different shapes and sizes, or maybe your family just got tired of eating them. What you can do is you can grind up those cookies and just make a basic cookie crust too, which would be great to use in this dessert. So keep in mind when you have those cookies left over, like I said, if they're getting a little hard, as long as they're not burnt or raw in any way, you can go ahead and grind those up and use them for some sort of a crust, the same that you would use kind of like an Oreo cookie or a graham cracker crust. So try to utilize the things in your kitchen that you have that are still good. Okay, so this is it, just a basic little bit of a streusel crust. Just want to make sure I don't have any big pieces of butter. So what I'm going to do next is I just have a cake pan. You can use a springform pan if you want, but I just use a basic cake pan. And the recipe that I'm going to be giving you makes 2 8-inch pans. You can make these individual too, and even smaller ones. But what you're going to do is just kind of put your crust in here and pat it down. I don't pat mine down too hard because I just don't want it to be too hard when I go to slice it. And it's a rather thin crust, and you don't have to fuss over it too much. And what you're going to do is you are going to bake this at 350 degrees for about maybe 12 minutes. If you see it starting to turn a little brown around the edges, then go ahead and pull it out. You're just really kind of toasting it, and you're bringing out the flavor in your nuts. So you're not really cooking it. And like I said, you don't want this to get too hard on you because it's going to be a little harder to cut. So don't pat that crust down too much, and be careful not to bake it too much. Okay, so now that we have the basics, the crust, let's go ahead and talk about this Chantilly cream. Okay, so I've got some whipped cream that I whipped up earlier, and I've got some egg whites, so I'm going to go ahead and whip these up. And I didn't pre-whip these because they, they deflate, so you kind of have to whip your egg whites and use them up right away. So I'm putting some granulated sugar, and we're just going to whip these to kind of a medium peak. Then we're going to add a little bit more sugar. Okay. So for your egg whites, you don't ever want to whip these dry until they're crumbly, because they're really not much good for many things once they get to that stage, because they just completely deflate and you'll see little speckles in your mixture. So always be careful that you're not over whipping your egg whites. They'll go and go and go, and then all of a sudden they're kind of be ready. So just keep an eye on them. Make sure your bowl is nice and clean. Make sure it's nice and dry. There's no greasy residue or anything like that in your bowl. And also what you can do, a little technique to ensure that your egg whites whip up nicely, is you can take some vinegar on a paper towel and rub it inside of your bowl and on your whip, and that's going to add some acidity, which is going to help stabilize these egg whites, and it'll help with your whipping, and you won't be able to taste it. It's just a little bit of acidity that's going to help. Okay, so our egg whites are coming along nicely. So let's go ahead and take a look at our berry compote. Okay, so this is the flavor in the Chantilly cake. And what I did is I just took some blackberries and some raspberries and some strawberries. I sliced the strawberries, and I put these on the stove with a little bit of sugar, and I just simmered them until they became soft, maybe for about 4 minutes for this little amount. Be sure that you're stirring constantly. And it kind of, it softens them, it breaks them up, and the flavor combinations with this are really limitless. So what you're going to want to do is chill this compote. So I made it earlier and I chilled it a little bit because you're going to be adding it to whipped cream and the egg whites, and you don't want any melting. Okay, so this is whipping up nicely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit more sugar. And depending on, what you like, you can add more sugar or you can add a little bit less. Be careful that you're not adding too much sugar to any frozen dessert because it really affects the freezing temperature. The more sugar you have, the lower temperature it has to be to freeze. So be careful of that. If you're having problems with things freezing, try cutting back on the sugar, and that's really going to make a big difference. So you're going to go ahead and add just a little bit more. And our egg whites are just about ready. Like I said, you don't want to over whip these where they're dry at all because they just completely deflate when you try to mix them with anything. Just a nice kind of medium peak, just right past the soft peak. Okay, they're just about ready. Okay, these look perfect. They're holding their shape. They didn't dry out on us. They have a nice little peak to them, and they're going to fold in nicely. Okay, going to go ahead and set these aside for just a second, and let's grab our berry mixture. Okay, so as far as the compote, like I said, I used strawberry, blackberry, and raspberry because this is just a combination that I like. You can add a little bit of liqueur to this. I'm going to be adding a little bit of lime juice. You can do lemon as well, but I like the lime flavor with the berries, so I'll typically use lime. You can use a lot of other fruits for this. You can use peaches, would be super nice. Any of the stone fruits would be really nice, but I definitely recommend trying this with the berries first. Okay, so it smells super delicious with the addition of the lime juice. So I'm going to go ahead and fold in my egg whites, and then we'll do our whipped cream last. And please let me know if you have any questions. And please try the frozen berry chantilly cake. Okay, so while we're folding, we're going to talk about some other variations on this. I'm making a cake, an 8-inch cake. What you can do is you can also put this in little souffle ramekins and make individual desserts for a still form frozen souffle. So what you can do is you can make a collar with parchment paper, and you can put that around the ramekin, and that's going to hold it, and you can make a souffle. Okay, so back to the mixture. I'm just very gently folding in my egg white mixture. As you can see, it's nice and smooth. There's no breaking. I didn't over whip these at all. Super beautiful color. And please let me know if you have any questions. Everyone's a little quiet. Okay, so our cake is coming along. We're going to go ahead and fold in our whipped cream next. Okay, and like I said, make sure that your berry mixture is completely cool, otherwise you're going to be melting this whipped cream. And it's a nice pretty color. Like I said, peaches work great with this. You could even do kind of a peach melba, peaches and raspberry. But the flavor combinations are limitless, and these look really cute if you make them in individual ramekins too. Like I said, you can make a collar with the parchment paper, and if you need any help, just contact me about that. So this is nicely folded through. It's a super nice filling. So let's go ahead and fill our cake. So I have a crust that I toasted earlier that I just made the streusel filling, and I toasted this, and like I said, I'm just using a regular cake pan. You can also use a springform pan if you have one. It's going to be a little bit easier to get out, but I'm going to show you a technique how you can get this out of the cake pan easily. And we have a question. The question is how do you know if it's whipped enough or over whipped? You're always going to whip things softly and not very firm. As you can see, when I did the egg whites, they weren't too firm, they weren't dry, and they were whipped just a little bit past the soft peak. And the same with the whipped cream. Don't whip these until they're stiff and dry. They're going to have that real dry look to them once they start to over whip. So just always think softness when you're folding through. Okay, so the cake is ready to go in the freezer, and I have a cake that I made earlier that we're going to be pulling out of the freezer, and we'll go ahead and we'll take that one out of the pan. Okay, so this is it. You don't need anything fancy to make your still form berry chantilly cake. It's nice for summertime. Perfect. What you're going to do is you're going to freeze this for at least 6 hours. Overnight is best, but make sure you're leaving it in the freezer for at least 6 hours. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and set this aside, and please let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so I've got my berry chantilly cake that I made. I made this last night, and just wrapped it up really good and put it in the freezer, and it looks perfectly set. So what we're going to do is we've got to get this out of the pan. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a trick that pastry chefs use. You're going to warm up the cake pan. And this is a typical thing to see in the pastry kitchen. So what you can do is you can warm it up in a little bit of warm water like you would do a Jell-O mold. Be careful, don't leave it in there too long because it's going to melt on you. So based on considering how warm your kitchen is too, if you made a ton of these, you wouldn't want them all sitting out at once. You might want to do maybe 3 at a time. So always keep in mind the temperature of your environment when you're making cakes like this and you're unmolding them. So like I said, you can warm up the outside, putting this in a little pan of warm water. Be careful not to splash on the inside. Or you can take your torch. You can use your kitchen torch. I have a small kitchen torch that I bought at a kitchen supply store, or a specialty kitchen store where you can get those. And I also have this torch that I bought at the hardware store, and this is my favorite. This is what I always use in a commercial kitchen because I've got plenty of gas here, and it's it's easy to hold. Once you turn it off, you don't have to worry. Once you turn it on, you don't have to worry about it going off. So I highly recommend picking up one of these propane torches at the hardware store. They're a little bit more inexpensive, but you're going to have to be a little bit careful when you're using them. But if you think about it, you can do so much with this. You could do 50 mini creme brulees so easily, and you won't run out of gas, and you don't have to worry about your torch dying on you. So economically, this is a good investment. And I'm used to using this size, so it's kind of my go-to torch. So what you're going to want to do, let me show you how you set this up. Okay, so it's going to come, you can buy it in a box with the canister and the nozzle. So what you're going to want to do is you just screw it on, pretty easy. Make sure that it's off when you're screwing it on. That would be twisted to the left. Okay, so now the top is on. What you're going to want to do is we're turning on the gas now, twisting to the right. Oh, maybe I twist it, twist to the left to turn it on. Twist to the right to turn it off. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm twisting to the left just a little bit. You can kind of hear the gas coming out a little bit too. Hold it away from you, nozzle away. Just take a lighter and light it. And it's lit. And it's ready to go. So be careful because this is, eye length. So be real careful with this. And, just keep it on a low flame. You can turn it up once you feel a little more comfortable, but I like to use a low flame. And this is, it's a great tool if you feel comfortable with it. If not, just use something small or just use some water. But I just kind of wanted to introduce you to this tool. Okay. So I kind of, I've got a low flame going. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just going around this pan, and it's melting it the same way that it would melt it if you put it in water. But you're going to see pastry chefs doing this in the kitchen all the time. This is how they're going to unmold frozen desserts like this. This is how they're going to unmold their mousse cakes or ring cakes. So you can kind of feel if it's warming up a little bit, and then be careful with your torch. Always face that flame away from you. Put it someplace where it's not going to fall over, and don't do this with kids around at all. So what you can do is you can take, your baby offset like this, and you can just go ahead and you can finish releasing this. And I feel my cookie in the bottom. I might have to kind of go around this a few times to get that cookie released, so I can kind of feel it a little bit. And what you can do too, if your cookie is a little stuck, you can go ahead and hit the bottom as well. So please let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so I feel it loosening up. I think I saw a little bit of movement too. These baby offsets are perfect for this. This is kind of one of my go-to tools. You can use a little bit bigger one, but as you can see, this is working out pretty good. I got a little spot that's stuck. I'm just making sure that I'm releasing this cookie all the way. Kind of going around, making sure that it's loosened up. Okay, should be okay, but we'll check it out when we try to invert it. And I've got a little bit of this, I've got a little bit of a lip, so I'm just smoothing this out. And what we're going to do is we're going to invert this onto a cake circle, and hopefully it'll come out. What you're going to do is turn it over and tap it. I felt it release. Super easy way to get this out of the pan. And like I said, springform pan works well, but if you don't have one, you can definitely use this technique. And then what you're going to do is you're going to invert it back. And this is your berry chantilly cake. Okay, let's go ahead and turn this torch off, turning it off to the right. Okay? It's going to be hot on top. Be careful not to touch it. When you store this, make sure that you take these apart in case you have the gas on it a little bit. It won't leak out of your canister. Okay, another thing to consider really quick before I go ahead and finish this up. If your kitchen was like hot, you're in the tropics or something like that, and you feel like the top of this cake got a little soft when you're trying to unmold it, put a little bit of plastic on your cake circle and that's going to help with any sticking. But you should be okay doing it just the way that I did it. So what do you think of the berry chantilly cake? Looks pretty delicious, doesn't it? Let's go ahead and put a little whipped cream and we'll finish this with some berries. Super easy to make. This is a nice still form dessert. Great for the, the warmer months or even the warmer climates. So you can go ahead and put this on a plate. And we put a little whipped cream, some berries. You can even make a little bit extra. I made some extra berry compote, and you can serve that with the cake. So I'm just going to put a little whipped cream, and we're going to get ready to say our goodbyes. So please let me know if you have any questions or comments on the frozen berry chantilly cake. So it's beautiful, and it's so easy. And your friends will be impressed if you make this. And I think that we had a question. A question?
Where can I find the recipe?
I didn't hear the question.
Do you have a link for it?
Okay, hold on. Oh, we're going to post the recipe. The question is, where can you find the recipe? We're going to be posting the recipe with the video. And if you have any questions, be sure to reach out to me, and I can help you by answering any of those. So this is already pretty creamy, so I'm not putting a lot of cream on here, but I'm definitely going to be sprinkling this with some berries just to finish it off. And you can pretty much do any fruit, and it's a great little dessert to serve in the warm weather. So keep this in mind, and also, keep in mind the flavor variations. You can add some liqueur to the berry compote. Something like amaretto would be super nice because you have the almond in the crust, or even some chambord, or even maybe a little bit of rum or something like that, some Grand Marnier. So the variations with flavor are limitless. You could use lemon juice instead of lime juice. And like I said, some stone fruits like the peaches would be nice, or a little bit apricot, or even a little peach and raspberry. But thanks so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time. And please try the berry chantilly cake. It's a great frozen free-form dessert. And we have a question.
Thank you, Chef.
You're welcome. Any questions before we go? All right, guys, we'll see you next time, okay? Goodbye.